Cory Sandhagen versus Petr Yan. Guys, here's what happened. And you must hear me out on this because I've never seen Cory Sandhagen look so good. That was awesome. It really was. You always want to hear, or you're always forced to hear, about a guy with a reach advantage. We can't get around it. Whoever started the tail of the tape all those years ago doing height and weight and reach, it worked. And it stuck with us, but you always hear advantage. I think if you took, and I haven't done this, but I think if you took 50 fights at random, now we know full well somebody's going to have a reach advantage in every fight. So 50 fights at random, and then computed who won more, the guy with the reach advantage or the guy with not. Not only do I not think it's close to 50-50, I'll bet you it's about 80-20 against the guy with the longer arms. Mike Tyson, by example, never had a single fight where he had a reach advantage. Not one, that's literal. You ever think of it like that? Mike Tyson never had a height advantage, and only 8 times in his entire career, that includes the amateurs, only 8 times ever did he weigh more than the opponent. It's one of those things where why would it be an advantage? Why would it be an advantage to have longer arms? And the guy that likes to bring you that stat then likes to tell you if he can keep him at the end of the punches. Oh, let me guess what you're going to say next. If his opponent can get inside and work the body, right? I mean, it's one of these things. You can never get around it, no matter how silly it is. Why do I bring that up with Sandhagen? Because Sandhagen is on the list, a very short list of 5 guys. You got guys like Cory Sandhagen, you got like Jon Jones, you got Izzy Adesanya, you got Jon Jones, did I already say Jon Jones? Anderson Silva, and you got to go all the way back to the 80s, all the way back to Thomas Hitman Hearns, to find somebody that had a meaningful reach and knew how to use it. That's where the problem comes. You ever see those tall guys that are walking around, but they don't want to be a tall guy, so they kind of hunch over a little bit? You seen that? Guys are the same way. Instead of enjoying and celebrating their height, they get that way with reach. They don't want to be able to reach out and touch it from across there, so they start using elbows or they start boxing inside. They just don't know how to use the arm. Sandhagen does. And Sandhagen, I've never seen Sandhagen get bested on his feet. I don't think that you have either. Cory Sandhagen on his feet is a bear. Absolute problem. From an X's and O's standpoint, Cory was switching from southpaw to orthodox more than he ever has in another fight. It was one combination switch, and that would include defensively. If he was orthodox and defended a combo, he's now southpaw. He will defend a combo, he's back to orthodox. It was incredible. And that's only going to buy you a beat. That's going to buy you a 1/10 of a second. And I can remember in wrestling, because there's a lot of things where you can freeze your opponent for a 1/10 of a second, or he can freeze you. Roy Pittman, my coach, I was 9 years old. He was given a talk about a 1/10 of a second. And a lot of guys, even the older guys, were brushing it off. Oh, what's the difference? 1/10 of a second. Blink of an eye. I remember Coach Pittman said, you don't think that's a long time? Coach Pittman said, I want you to go home. I want you to turn your stove on until it gets red hot. Then I want you to set the side of your cheek on there for a 1/10 of a second, and then tell me that's not a long time. So every time there's a beat at a 1/10 of a second, it's against Yan. Yan has to do the geometry. Okay, he's leading his left leg, here's what my options are. Okay, he's leading his right leg, here's what my options are. He's constantly resetting, and Sandhagen was picking him apart. Sandhagen looked fantastic, not just for that first round, for 2.5, 3 minutes of the second round. This was the Sandhagen show. And I really think I need to bring you along this journey of just how good Cory looked. Even in defeat, how good Cory looked, or you can't appreciate what Yan did. Right? He can't have looked great unless his opponent did. Yan had to figure out, first off, when you start getting picked apart, you start to fall apart quickly. You take a couple of shots in the nose, you take a couple in the face, and you throw air balls back. It is extremely frustrating. Then you start to do what's called taking inventory. Okay, we're 3 minutes into the fight. There's 22 minutes left. He's hit me 8 times. I've hit him 1 time. And you start doing the math. Oh my God, I'm going to get hit 400 times and I'm only going to land 3 strikes. I might as well quit now. Like that will actually go through your head. You will have fighters that have to go out there and fight with themselves just to stay in the match. Yan stayed in the match. And the scariest guy is whoever can go harder longer than the other one. A combat athlete's biggest fear is not going into battle. It is not failure. It is exhaustion. His biggest fear is that he will reach a level of fatigue where he can't finish the match. or he can't follow the golden rule, which is to protect yourself at all times. That's the biggest fear. And the real scary ones, the real greats, I'm talking the greats. I'm talking the George St. Pierres. I'm talking the Randy Coutures. I'm talking the Kamaru Usmans. They all found a way to weaponize pace. That's the only commonality that they have. Izzy Adesanya gets thrown in that list. In all fairness, it's not, oh, this guy's got the longer arm, or this guy's more dynamic, and he'll kick you in the mouth with his foot. They can go harder than the opposition. They found a way to make a weapon out of conditioning, and I saw that with Yan, and it was honorable. It was extremely honorable the way Petr Yan was getting lost in that fight and had to re-find himself. Was losing moments of that fight. Lost the first round. Hey, I thought he lost more. I wasn't positive who won this fight until Bruce Buffer announced it. I really wasn't. Were you? I was not sold that Cory didn't win. Then I find out all three judges have the same, which is 4-1. I start texting some confidants, some people that I trust in this space. That nobody agreed with me. They're all saying, Chael, I don't know what you were watching. They even asked Cory Sandhagen that question after the fight. Daniel Cormier said to him, do you agree with the decision? Cory was cool. Cory was, yeah, that sounds about right. So I realized old Chael's got to wash the dirt out of his eyes. I must have seen it wrong. I'm only speaking to that, not to rehash the victory, but to tell you how well Cory did. Cory did great. And what about these new takedowns that Cory's bringing out? You guys have only seen Cory have one problem. Until this fight, we've never seen Cory get bested on his feet. This fight was 25 minutes. It was 23 and a half on the feet. So we got to, okay. Petr Yan did a better job with the strikes. Great. But Cory Sandhagen said, and I'm quoting him, my wrestling sucks. No, Cory. Your wrestling used to suck. That is not suck wrestling. That was pretty damn good wrestling. Get into those positions, keeping your hips in, keeping your chest straight, keeping your head up. You cannot do that without an immense amount of practice. He could get to the leg. He could even get to the body, but not with his hips in and his head's up driving across. That is practice, and I could tell he'd worked on some stuff. He's getting better. Cory Sandhagen is getting better. He was absolutely the right guy for this job. And now you got to look at Yan, because everything I just said about Cory is true. And you'd have to be a fool to then not come to the conclusion that as great as Cory did, Yan did better. For Yan to know where he was, for Yan to push the pace. Yan was not ready for those takedowns. He had to figure that out on the moment. None of us were. None of you were. I wasn't. None of us have ever seen Cory do that. That includes Yan. Element of surprise, very real thing in the art of war. But it wasn't the case. It wasn't the case in that Petr Yan fell apart. He knew where he was. He scrambled. He had to work hard. He had to get that heart rate up. But he fought every single position. He came from behind. That is official. It's 4-1. All three judges, but they all gave Cory the first round. So Yan had to come from behind. And nobody knew what the score of that match was. I really did think this could be 2 apiece. I really thought that. John Anik said something that there's only been 2 clear rounds, 1 and 3. Who knows what happened in 2 and 4? I agree with that. This was even 4-1, even if that was perfect, 5-0, whatever you want. They were close rounds. It was so competitive. All the way to the very end. Sandhagen gets hit. He's hurt. He knows the bell's about to go off. He sprints and jumps into the air trying to throw a Hail Mary pass. I mean, come on. These guys did so good. This was an instant classic. Aljo watched it. Aljo weighed in. I believe Aljo's doing a show on YouTube. He's got a show somewhere. iTunes, YouTube, something like this. But he weighed in and he was very complimentary of Yan. And Aljo even broke down what he did. Talk about him parrying, talk about him firing it back. He saw some tendencies, but he was complimentary of them. What do you make of that? I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good for Aljo. For Aljamain Sterling to be able to identify accurately what his opponent is doing well, that's a good sign. You always have to say something bad about your opponent. You have every right to go out there and tip your hat where it's due so you can get in the gym and you can work to counter that. And I will tell you, a lot of people like to talk about how that fight was going. That Aljamain Sterling was falling apart and Petr Yan was coming on. I saw what you guys saw. But I think you need to back the tape up a little bit. Because Sterling was doing just fine early on. He ran into a bit of a wall. There was a fatigue there. And I just bring that to you because If Aljo knows what we all know, the big secret, right, that he got a little bit tired, he's got time to fix that. He's got time to fix that. And if you go look when they were both at their best, the first 5 minutes, the first 8 minutes, when both guys feel good before the fight starts, it's an athletic competition. Aljo can beat him. Aljo can beat him. He's going to need to learn these things. He's going to need to know what I just said is accurate, but I also concede what Aljo said is accurate. With the parries, with the good stuff of Yan, with the counterfighting, with his ability to get inside. I don't know that Sterling knew what a hard fight he was going to be in the first time. I think he is fully aware the second time, not to mention he has time. It's a very different fight. And then you get TJ Dillashaw going to be coming off knee surgery. TJ's already back in the gym. TJ Dillashaw makes that whole division very exciting. 135 pounds is very good hands for now. I've never seen it a more healthy 135 pounds, though. Can we agree on that? Who's going to fight who, when they're going to fight them, who's the top contender. If you're having that kind of argument discussion, your weight class is in a good spot. 135 right now is in a fantastic position.